Hi everyone, welcome back again to our channel, and hopefully we've got an interesting video for you here today. And the one that I want to do here is one that I've had quite a few people as of late discuss with me and ask me if I'd kind of throw my thoughts into the pile kind of thing on it. And this will be for the soulmate twin flame connection. And people have been mentioning to me about, besides all of the other things that are going on in the connection, they have been mentioning about certain abilities, skills. I'll read a few of them off here. I got them jotted down here on my pad. Telepathy, healing, astral travel, artistic talent, writing, speaking, psychic abilities, clairvoyance, clairaudience. The list goes on and on and on. And these seem to be happening usually, from what I'm told, what I've been seeing, is either during what I call the bubble up phase or the mystical phase of those connections that they're happening. It's interesting to see this for the simple reason that I've always believed, and I still do believe, that everyone, no matter what their situation in life or how intelligent or how creative or what abilities they may have, still have within them a lot of latent abilities that have not been developed or evolved to a greater degree. And it would seem as though that part of the package recently of all of the connections that are coming together in the soulmate community and the twin flame community, that I'm seeing more and more of these abilities start to develop. Now, most people, as a general rule, usually will attribute the manifestation or the prominent stepping up of a latent ability or a skill to the other person in the connection. And really, it's not necessarily because of the person. It's kind of a byproduct, if I can put it in those terms, of the spiritual evolution and the energetic enhancement of the person as they've made this connection in the soulmate or the twin flame connection. And usually they will be in a very mystical state of consciousness, and that state of consciousness will stay for an extended period of time, and usually the skill or the ability will. However, I have also heard some people talk about where when the connection seems to have not necessarily broken off, but gone into all of the stages that everybody talks about all the time. A lot of people say that suddenly all of a sudden all of that telepathy and clairvoyance and clairaudience and creative writing skills and the rest of it all seems to kind of disappear. And in truth, I've had a few people even mention to me, like, well, what the hell happened? Well, what happened is because it came out initially in that connection between the two individuals, it's kind of like I said, it's a byproduct. And as it gets stimulated into, shall we say, coming into fruition for a period of time, and then what happens is the two people go back into their relatively normal state of consciousness, but they're never quite the same as where they were before. So what happens is, usually what I have found as a general rule, this is where a very important stage takes place, and I've mentioned this before in another video, that if individuals in these twin flame connections and the soulmate connection are going to continue to evolve and go through their spiritual pathway, they have to make a significant and a dramatic change, first of all in their lifestyle, their environment, but most importantly in their personality. One of the things that is very important to remember, when an individual develops such skills as this, all right, and I've mentioned a whole bunch of them here, and there's probably even more. To use these, I mean, you can even have, I've even had people say they can go and read the Akashic records, or they can communicate with people on the other side. I mean, the list is endless here. Mediumship, channeling, all kinds of stuff can happen. But what's important to remember here is, in spite of the fact that this can be considered a gift or a skill that has been latent within somebody and it's developing, one also has to acquire or develop the personality that's able to use this skill or this gift and use it with what I call authenticity or integrity, or I believe the word that is even more appropriate is responsibility. Because everyone has latent abilities and skill, it is also, as I mentioned, very important that they have the personality to be able to handle this. And this is a very important stage. So usually at this point, sometimes when an individual is going through the changes in personality and they're offloading a lot of belief systems and letting go of stuff, and they're actually going through that, these skills that have become so prominent suddenly will all disappear. And they will usually stay disappeared, if that's the appropriate way of putting it, until the individual has reached a point where they have achieved a personality change or a personality state that they've developed some authenticity, some integrity, some honesty, a little bit perhaps more than what they may have had before. And if they do, and sometimes what happens is some people, soulmates and twin flames, sometimes they need to have 2 or 3 or even more of these connections with another person, excuse me, to be able to evolve to the point where they have developed the personality. Because it's all about, all of these connections, relatively speaking, are all about the overall growth of the soul, okay, in spite of what we all think and the important labels and everything else, and I get it, all right, those are important, and people want to aspire to making that connection. And I also realize there's a lot of mix and action and confusing information from both perspectives or both camps, if we can put it that way. But in doing this video here is, as I mentioned, the personality. If the personality doesn't get to the point, here again, everybody is unique. And during the course of one spiritual awakening, we're not all on the same page at the same time. And we're not all at the same point of evolution. So the expression, know that we're all equal, just doesn't fit in the spiritual community, especially when people are going through the evolutionary process. And you could have somebody who's been going through it for 10, 15, 20 years, and someone who's starting out at just the very first few months. And they're at 2 different levels and 2 different states of consciousness. So they could be at different stages of development. So the personality things is unique to the individual, and how many connections it may take or what circumstances will have to be drawn towards that person to achieve from their individual soul level the type of personality that is deemed necessary by the soul for that person to have. Then what happens is these, I'm going to call them gifts or skills, will be returned to the individual. What I've seen happen on occasion is, and I want to handle this gingerly here. What I have seen on occasion is there have been quite a few people who have had these connections, and they start to develop the skill that seems to come out, but somewhere along the line, the personality development, which I deem to be more important than the skill or the ability, seems to get pushed to the side. And the person becomes fascinated with the skill or the ability. One of the prominent ones is telepathy, that I see a lot of in these connections. And a lot of this takes place during the heightened phase of the 2 people. But as it goes on, this telepathic connection or empathic connection can be really enhanced with other people. And a person could get caught up in the whole excitement. I mean, I have to admit, when you start developing, these kinds of skills and ability, it's pretty exciting stuff. So you could get lost in them if you're not careful. And in reality, you could find yourself in a lot of difficulty, because what happens is it's like, it's like you're a kid and you're learning how to walk. It takes a period of time and there's some lumps and bumps along the way. And in a lot of cases, the skill or the gift is not fully developed, and it needs time to develop. It needs time to get set into the physical body. It needs time to get set up in the chakra system, and it needs the personality to be able to go along with it that's applicable to the individual in question. So what I'm going to suggest here in this video is, if this kind of a situation is happening to you now, or if it's going to happen in the future, the best way that I would recommend at this particular point is to focus your attention and learn how to meditate in some form or fashion via the heart center chakra. What I have found is, when people are going through these twin flames and soulmate connection, when the heart center chakra activates, along with the Kundalini activation that takes place with it, usually as a general rule, if one would, bar anything else, learn to focus their attention to the heart center chakra, to learn how to meditate by focusing their attention to the heart center chakra, you can pretty much, from my experience over, oh my goodness, being actively involved on and off for over 20 years in teaching meditation classes and teaching people how to meditate, the best focus and discipline is with the heart center chakra. In doing that, what will happen is automatically you'll tap into the development of the personality, and the gifts and the skills will come out all at the same time, but you'll be in a situation where you will have established that connection with the higher self or the oversoul, whatever term you're comfortable with, and you'll be able to develop these skills in appropriate fashion. So that let me put it this way, as a general rule, now, I'm talking now this year, 2018, and with the people that I've been connecting with and working with in the last little while, I find that once a skill or a gift, if that's the appropriate word, begins to manifest, it can take, usually, and this is in general terms, okay, this is in general terms, this does not apply specifically, to any particular individual, but from my experience in general term, it would seem to take about 2 to 3 years for a person who have actually had, say, the gifts or the skills start to manifest in initial connection with their soulmate or their twin flame. It would probably take 2 to 3 years for the development of the personality and the proper alignment of the chakras and the focus and discipline to the heart center for the skills and abilities to actually begin to manifest, say, again, and for the person to be in a situation to use them in a proper fashion. More and more as we go along through the evolutionary process, we're going to have more and more people that are doing this. And one of the things that I've noticed, just as to kind of top this video off, is a lot of times when people are having these connections, the soulmate and the twin flame connection, they do, in my experience, too often tell too many people what they're going through. And if you are not careful and you happen to mention it to the wrong people, or your behavior becomes a little erratic, I see where many people end up in a round room and being on medication for the developing gifts or the developing personality that's taken place with people. So, kind of more dialogue, more information is kind of required on this part of it. I realize that in the in the soulmate and the twin flame community, there are a lot of people, and this is natural, all they want to talk about or all they want to express is the relationship or the connection between themselves and the other person. But all of the things that I'm talking about are going to become extremely important to them at some particular point down the road. So just being involved or totally engrossed in the connection, the relationship, or what's going on between the two of you in the dynamics of it, perhaps it might be wise to start taking a look at some of the things that are manifesting in the way of skills or gifts, and understanding that your personality is going to have to go through a complete modification and a complete change at this particular point as you go along. So while focusing on you and the other person has become the priority with a great deal of people, and I understand that, in actual fact, there are a whole host of things, excuse me, going on that are extremely important in the development of what's taking place for the person as an individual. So just some perhaps food for thought, if I can put it that way. And as I said, just to kind of wrap this video up, is if one can learn to meditate, focus to the heart center chakra, I think you'll find yourself in a pretty good state and in pretty good shape as you go along with your evolutionary process. Okay, and I'm going to leave it there. And if any of you need assistance or help, I believe you know where to find us, twinflames.ca. And we have on our website a lot of things that we do that are there for you. Have a great day, everybody, and take care.